Howdy, howdy, howdy. Welcome to another edition of the Scott Hamilton Show. We've got some news to hit right off the bat. Mel Tucker gone as the head coach of the Michigan State Spartans. Not a big surprise. We saw this coming. It's been a couple weeks since those sexual harassment allegations came forth and the revelation that there had been a Title IX investigation going on basically since last December, looking into Mel Tucker's relationship with a rape survivor, a rape victim, and an advocate against sexual assault, sexual violence of any sort. There was supposed to be a hearing next week, and by all accounts, that hearing's still going to happen. But the powers that be at Michigan State deciding Mel Tucker had admitted to enough stuff to give them cause to cut him loose, despite the massive contract, despite all the money that he was still owed, that he had violated the ethics clause in his contract. So they cut him loose. And there's going to be a lot more to come with this. He's going to fight back. He's already made statements that this is part of a witch hunt. It's part of a concerted effort to get him out, to get him removed, to get Michigan State out from underneath this massive contract. Because let's face it, the results have not validated that massive deal. I want to say Mel Tucker's 10-9 since he got that contract a little less than 2 years ago. Nothing really to show for it since then. A lot of sizzle, not much steak. And it's only going to get more arduous with the new teams coming into the Big Ten, the elimination of divisions, even though the college football playoff is going to be expanded. But this is going to be in court. We're going to hear about this for quite a while. My best guess, and I'm not an attorney, they come to some sort of settlement. And I'm fixing my light. They come to some sort of settlement. He's going to get some money, okay, unless they have reams of proof that he did something really bad. He's going to get some money because Michigan State, it behooves Michigan State to get this over with as quickly as possible. Remember, Michigan State still having to deal with so much grime and residue from the Larry Nassar awfulness. It would behoove Michigan State to go ahead and get this over with as soon as possible. So we'll track it as it continues to develop. The question now, who's going to be the next head coach at Michigan State? We hear a lot of different candidates being tossed around. Mike Elko at Duke. I saw Dave Clawson at Wake Forest. Saw his name mentioned. A lot of the usual suspects. Dave Dorn at NC State. One name that we don't have to track any longer, Chris Kleinman at Kansas State. He has already come forth and said, I'm not going to chase that job. I've got a good deal with K-State. I'm happy where I'm at. I'm worried about building a program here, and he's done a wonderful job so far. He's got the Big 12 championship from last year. Kansas State just really, really going in a good direction, something very reminiscent of Bill Snyder's peak years with the Wildcats. So Chris Kleinman, he will not be, presumably, if he sticks to his word, the next head coach of the Michigan State Spartans. Other than that, just big news, just getting ready for Week 5 of college football. Week 4 was so good. We've had a wonderful season up to this point. A lot of narratives have continued to develop as the season has unfolded. We saw the meteoric rise of Colorado football, and then what happened last week at Oregon. The Ducks really just putting the smackdown on Colorado, and it was to be expected. Colorado, and this isn't news, but Colorado winning 3 games, make no mistake about it, still an incredible achievement considering this program was 1-11 last year and has not had a winning season since 2016. So just to win 3 games was exponential improvement. Deion Sanders is to be applauded for that. And the way they were doing it, very exciting offense. Shadir Sanders, the talent is undeniable. Travis Hunter, injured, going to be out a few weeks. Talent is undeniable. But still, this is a very flawed, very incomplete football team. This roster, no matter what kind of massive transformation it underwent during the offseason, no matter how much Coach Prime revamped, refurbished, whatever, broke it down, built it back up, the roster still has serious gaps, specifically up front. the lines, the offensive line, the defensive line, specifically the offensive line. That is an area where you have to be able to develop players. Unless you can go in and raid the best of the best in the portal, you're not going to have a good enough offensive line unless you're developing your own. And let's face it, the best of the offensive line that's in the portal, they're going to go somewhere else right now. They're going to go somewhere where they're going to compete for a spot in the CFP. That's not Colorado yet. But you're better off building your own. And let's face it, the best of the offensive line in the portal, there aren't that many. There aren't. I think about last year, the best in the portal was a tackle from Vanderbilt, Tyler Steens, and he went to Alabama and ended up being the most critical piece of that offensive line for the Crimson Tide. But Colorado's not going to be able to get a guy like that at this juncture. Not yet. But you got to get guys in. You recruit good offensive linemen who have potential. You coach them up. You let them eat at the training table. You let them lift in the weight room, and you let them develop into their man bodies, and also learn the technique of being a Power 5 offensive lineman. So once they start rolling with that, things are going to transform significantly at Colorado. And Deion said it afterward. We got our butt kicks, but get us while you can. So I'm still buying stock in the program. I'm buying long-term futures in the program. Short-term, no way. They got Southern Cal coming up this week, 3 touchdown underdogs. They got Washington still down the road. If they being Colorado Buffaloes, go to a bowl game. It'd be the biggest story in college football this year. Bar none. Already is. But if they can get those 3 more victories and go to a bowl game, it'll be absolutely incredible. Deion Sanders will be coach of the year. That's my take on that. What other news do we have? Not really a whole lot. I mean, just getting ready for week 5. Still some reaction, fallout perhaps, to Ryan Day's harsh comments after Ohio State won that marvelous game against Notre Dame. Really taking offense to some things that Lou Holtz said. Reese Davis, the esteemed host of College Game Day, really just a college football guy, he thinks that Ryan Day is actually angry at Jim Harbaugh. And he was taking it out that Jim Harbaugh is still living in Ryan Day's head because of the just physical beatdowns Michigan has delivered upon the Buckeyes each of the last 2 years. And that was Ryan Day venting towards Jim Harbaugh and the incompetence, for lack of a better word, against Michigan the last 2 years down at Lou Holtz. Make of that what you will. SEC, people are starting to speculate that this will likely be the year the conference does not get 2 teams into the college football playoff. Last year of the 14 playoff. But also starting to hypothesize a world in which no team gets in. And it's plausible. There's a path to that, with Georgia right now being the standard bearer for the conference in so many different ways, besides being back-to-back national champions, being undefeated and looking super duper strong. There are 3 undefeated teams, by the way, in the SEC right now, all of them called the SEC East home: Georgia, Kentucky, Missouri. But let's say Georgia stubs its toe somewhere along the line, or loses. Maybe it's in a conference championship game, loses to an SEC West team that has 2 losses. Do they get in the playoff? We could see 2 out of the Big Ten, 1 out of the Big 12, the Pac-12. Lots to discuss about the Pac-12, but we'll get to that later. Let's really dive in and explore this deal with the SEC. We've got a wonderful interview with Blake Toppmeyer of USA Today. He covers the SEC up, down, all around for USA Today. He's going to join us on the other side. We're going to ask him about college football playoff possibilities with regards to the SEC. We're going to ask him, and looking ahead to this weekend with Kentucky and Florida playing, I'm going to ask him what is most responsible for the tone and the tenor of that Kentucky-Florida series changing so significantly over the last few years. Kentucky's won 3 of the last 5 against Florida after having previously not won since 1986. Is that more a testament to the coaching prowess, the program-building prowess of Mark Stoops, or to things starting to erode or going in a different direction of Florida? That'll be one of the questions we ask Blake Toppmeyer. And then later in the program, we'll have a little Heisman Trophy talk and bounce around a few other topics. So Stick around. More of the Sky Hamilton Show to come on FanStream Sports.
Hello, sports fans. FanStream Sports.
Hey, you like golf? There's a good chance you do, because I said so. But what do you need playing golf? Well, you need clubs. Right? Clubs, you need balls. The thing that people don't usually think about is that golf bag. And that's what most people see when they look at your golf clubs. Like right off the bat. And if you've got a raggedy bag, it's not doing you any favors, bud. So get you a new bag. Go over to orca-golf.com. Orca-golf.com. Why are you going there? You're going there because you want a golf bag, but you want one that's kind of screams you. So you want to pick the colors.
For
well,
the
you can use your
30,
own custom
60,
colors.
90.
Maybe you have a logo in mind. Maybe it's your
the merger.
logo. You're like Prince. Just have a symbol. That's the case. Dude, you can get your logo on there. Your name. Just get it done exactly like what you want it done by actual designers. Nothing goes out of their factory without the approval of the founder, Erica Bennett, who is just brilliant. We've seen some of her bags. We've got one of them actually in the studio. And you know what? Dude, it looks good. If you want other people to look at your golf setup and go, man, that just screams Frank. You want that? Then go over to orca-golf.com. Do yourself a favor and use the promo code DSP10 for 10% off and free shipping. I'll say that again, DSP10 for 10% off and free shipping. So do it today because Orca Golf is the best choice in the game.
Hi, golfers. IndyCar Tim here. I want to talk to you a little bit about Golf Central Magazine. It's not just a golf magazine. It's the magazine for everything. Turf, travel, philanthropy, and lifestyle. Head over to golfcentralmag.com and check out the latest issue. Some of the regular features in Golf Central Magazine: the Golf Bachelorette of the Month, the Golf Bachelor of the Month, the Golf Cart Girl of the Month, Golf History, Grip It and Sip It. So head over to golfcentralmag.com. It's free. It's the magazine for everything: turf, travel, philanthropy, and lifestyle. Golf Central Magazine at golfcentralmag.com. We'll see you there.
All right, guys, time to talk a little bit about Turf Life. You've seen the hats on our heads. You've been or seen the video of the studio. You've seen that the decals are all over the place. Turf Life. Man, it's the brand that salutes the consumer and industry players everywhere whose lives involve turf. What does that mean? That means if you play or have a business or, maybe you're a sports educator, you're going to be on turf at some point. So you live the turf life. So go ahead and tell everybody you live the turf life by having your Turf Life window decal or, the hat or the keychain or the something. Along that lines, just go to turflifeclub.com and become a turf head. That's what it's called when you live the turf life. You're now a turf head. And you can go join the club today and snag that window decal or snag any other special Turf Life accessories and go over there to that website, which is turflifeclub.com, and get your stuff and show everybody that, man, I'm all about that turf life. And then you just kind of raise your coffee mug at them and go, yeah, turf life, baby. That's what it's about. And then that's the end of the commercial. Ding. That means it's done in microwave talk.
Hey, listeners, make sure you check out the brand new FanStream Sports in-studio text line. You can reach us during any of our live shows or 24/7 at 214-937-0569. That's 214-937-0569. Text us 24/7 day or night, and we'll reply to you and make you part of the show.
Coming back at you. Now, more FanStream Sports.
It's been a weird year in the Southeastern Conference, odd to say the least. Some things we expected, quite a few things we did not expect. Let's get the lay of the land. Joining us now covers really all things college football, primarily the Southeastern Conference for USA Today. It's Blake Toppmeyer. Blake, welcome aboard. And middle of the week, how's your week going, and what are you expecting on Saturday?
Yeah, kind of a sneaky good week of SEC games this weekend with LSU, Ole Miss, Kentucky, Florida, highlighting the docket, and even Arkansas, Texas A&M, I think, could be a sneaky good one there. I think Arkansas is going to be the type of team that nobody wants to play, and yet somehow finishes like 6-6. Like they're not a Vanderbilt. They're not an offensively challenged Auburn. I think they can threaten a lot of teams, including threaten Texas A&M. I just think they're gonna lose as many games as they win, and obviously, folks in South Carolina will be pretty interested by the affair at Neyland Stadium on Saturday.
The way you described Arkansas, could that be the MO now and forever for that program as long as Sam Pittman is the coach? Because I'm of the belief, Blake, that maybe that program has hit its ceiling and that ceiling's not going to get much higher when Oklahoma and Texas come aboard. Could a 6-6, always a tough out, could that be the MO for Arkansas forever under Sam Pittman?
I don't know if 6-6 is the ceiling, but I get your point. I think like maybe going back a couple years to 2021 when Arkansas went 9-4, they were 4-4 in the conference, and they ran the table outside the conference that year, and so that allowed them to get to 9-4. I think that's probably a more realistic type of ceiling for Arkansas. I think they can win more than 6 games. I mean, it's still the only Power 5 school in its own state. I know it's not a state as rich in talent as, say, like a Georgia, but Arkansas's got proximity to Texas. Yes, they go up against a lot of schools on the recruiting trail there, but as we know, there's always good players living under a rock in Texas. You can go find. So I think they have a higher ceiling than just finishing 500, but I do think like getting to the SEC championship without divisions, with Oklahoma and Texas coming aboard, like that might become a pipe dream for Arkansas. However, with like the 12-team playoff coming around the corner, I do think that's the type of program that, say, like once every 6 years could be in the mix for an at-large bid to the playoff. That's what becomes so interesting to me about the 12-team playoff. It's for a conference like the SEC that could expect to generate 3, 4, maybe even in its best years, 5 bids. That pulls into play a program like Arkansas, not on an annual basis, but in those years where they're at their best, they get in the mix for the playoff, whereas in a 4-team format, they're never going to be in the mix for the playoff.
You're kind of touching on something, and I'll go ahead and jump ahead to this. It was a question I already had lined out for you, and we're looking at how the standings are playing out in the SEC, and the SEC West is kind of odd, to put it mildly, right now. The SEC East maybe about what we expected, but that being said, is this a year when the SEC, the best it can hope for is that its conference champion goes to the playoff?
I think so, and the SEC doesn't have much margin for error. I don't want to be a total alarmist and get the kind of the cheap take of the SEC is going to miss the playoff. I think when it's all said and done, the SEC doesn't miss the playoff. But I will say we can at least engage with the scenario of the SEC missing the playoff, and normally that's foolish talk, right? But with LSU, Alabama, and Texas A&M already saddled with a loss just 4 weeks into the season, every time those guys step out on the field now, it's a playoff eliminator. You're not going to get in as a 2-loss team from the West. I just don't see it. It would take absolute chaos, and the strength of the SEC just isn't there this year to get you in as a 2-loss team from the West. So each time those teams step out, it's a playoff eliminator. Then you look at Georgia. I think Georgia's going to get into the playoff. However, Georgia's schedule is so weak, they don't give themselves much margin for error. Like, as long as they keep winning, they're fine. I think it would. I don't see them falling below the top 2 in the rankings. I could see strength of schedule maybe flipping an undefeated from the Big Ten ahead of Georgia. But as long as Georgia keeps winning, I think they go into the playoffs as a number 1 or number 2 seed. And there just aren't many realistic opportunities where Georgia's going to lose. I know that, South Carolina gave them a game through a half, but at any point, did you really think Georgia was going to lose? I never reached that point. I thought what would happen in the second half would happen. It did happen. And you look at the schedule, it's like, who's Georgia going to lose to? They get Ole Miss in November, but it's at home. Ole Miss was exposed last week at Alabama. They have to travel to Tennessee in November. Neyland Stadium is going to be cranked up to 10 for that game. However, Tennessee 4 weeks in looks maybe more flawed than we were thinking in the preseason. The Vols have problems on the offensive line. They have problems in the defensive secondary, and they don't have Hendon Hooker and Jalen Hyatt to sort of cover up their deficiencies like they had last year. So I don't see where Georgia is going to lose unless maybe, in the SEC championship. Would that be enough to knock them out of the playoff at 12-1? I don't know.
Well, how high are you on Joe Milton right now? We know about the physical abilities of throwing a ball at zillion yards and all that, and we got a sample size of him as the starting quarterback both before the Hendon Hooker era came into play, and then even afterward when Hendon Hooker was injured. Where's Jalen Milroe or Joe Milton at in your eyes right now?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned how far he throws the football, because this gives me a chance to get up on the stump and make my speech. In June or July, when the Manning Academy occurs, there's always this headline coming out of there about, look how far such and such threw the football. And it's always like, how many times do we see during the course of the season a guy have the opportunity to launch a pass 80 yards down the field? How much protection would you need from your offensive line to be able to launch one 80 yards? It's like the old Tecmo Super Bowl game, right, where you run to the back of the end zone and throw a 120-yard pass down the field. That doesn't happen in real life. So I always kind of roll my eyes when I see these headlines coming out of the Manning Academy every year of, watch so-and-so throw it 80 yards. Who cares? How many passes are they going to throw 80 yards in the course of the season, right? It's what you do play to play. Milroe, he's been okay. He hasn't been Hendon Hooker. Now, in his defense, his wide receivers have not given him the support that Hendon Hooker received last year. His offensive line has not given him the support that Hooker received last year. I think Milroe is a middle-of-the-pack quarterback right now in the SEC, whereas coming into the season, I think we could engage with the idea that Milroe was a top 5 quarterback in the SEC. In fact, in my preseason rankings of SEC quarterbacks, I had Milton at number 4. I would not put him there right now based on what I've seen throughout the first 4 weeks. I don't think he's the biggest problem Tennessee's facing. He's not. Tennessee can win a lot of games with Joe Milton as its starting quarterback. The bigger concerns for Tennessee are its offensive line and its pass coverage. However, there's no denying that Milton is not and is not going to become what Hendon Hooker was a year ago.
Talking about Blake Toppmeyer, follow him on X at @Toppmeyer. It's X, not Twitter, by the way. Blake, we're supposed to call it X. So
it still takes some getting used to.
Again, you mentioned some pretty good games this weekend, Kentucky, Florida, and you have an excellent piece on this. The Kentucky-Florida series has completely shifted. The look of that series totally different than it was even a decade ago. Kentucky winning 3 of the last 5 matchups with the Florida Gators after not winning anything from 1986 until just a few years ago. Is the reshaping of that series more going to the credit of Mark Stoops and what he's been able to craft at Kentucky over the last decade, or is it to the detriment of Florida? It's Florida's fault that it shifted.
I'm going to say it's to Mark Stoops' credit. I do think there's an argument on the other side of that, but Stoops seized the moment with his best teams. He beat Florida in 2018. I think that was the best team Stoops has had in his long tenure at Kentucky. Kentucky had that really stingy defense that year, and Florida was good. Florida won 10 games that year. That was Dan Mullen's first season. They beat Michigan in a New Year's Six Bowl. That was not a bad Florida team at all. It's just Kentucky was, like I said, I think that was Stoops' best moment, and he took advantage of it right there. And then you come back in 2021, and maybe this was the beginning of the end of the Mullen era. Stoops won again, but again, that wasn't like Kentucky winning a battle of bad teams. That was Stoops' other 10-win season he's had in Lexington. So he's won 3 times, and maybe last year was more of a testament to Billy Napier and inherited a cupboard that was more bare than you would expect to be the case at Florida. But the other 2 times, I just think Stoops seized the moment with his 2 best teams he's had. And as I wrote recently, when the conversation around Mark Stoops, so many times the consecutive bowl trips come up as like a testament to his tenure there. And I don't really love that stat because bowl eligibility can be influenced by so many things. And in the case of Kentucky, it can be influenced by the number of MAC opponents you can cram onto your schedule. And sometimes over the years, I've needled Kentucky about that because they do kind of schedule themselves to bowl eligibility in their mediocre years. But what I think is really more the truer crowning achievement of Stoops' tenure is the fact that he's beat Florida 3 times. Now, some people might say, well, big deal. He's 3-7 against Florida. Well, that is a big deal for Kentucky because of the stat you just mentioned. Kentucky had lost to Florida in 31 straight years. So many Kentucky coaches came and went without not just not beating Florida, but without even coming close to threatening Florida, right? And now Stoops has made this into, it's really something of a rivalry game. I guarantee you Kentucky sees it as a rivalry game. Their players do. Their fan base does. He's made it competitive. Heck, Kentucky's favored this weekend, to me, more than the 7 straight bowl trips, which has included some mediocre Kentucky teams that were, on the backs of wins against teams like Eastern Michigan or something. He's had some good teams too, and beating Florida 3 times to me is really his crowning line on his resume.
I think, and we'll close it up with this, I think you hit something there that's really key, something that I've been preaching from the mountaintops for a long time, that Kentucky has a mindset that it just cannot get past. It's still got this mindset of, to your point, scheduling their way to bowl games. Getting it because they can't compete in the big bad SEC. They're only going to win a couple of games. They got to be able to schedule the MACs and the 1AA or FCS games of the world. They're pumping a lot of money into the program. The facilities are out of sight in Kentucky. We had the whole deal last year between Stoops and Calipari. Is it a basketball school? Is it a football school? Is it both school? Whatever. But they keep making this schedule because I think in its DNA, Kentucky doesn't trust itself with regards to football, and its ceiling will always be its ceiling because it won't get out of its own way. What's your take?
Yeah, and I think adding to that point, and Kentucky was not the only school that was in this camp, but right from the very beginning of the 8-game or 9-game schedule debate, Kentucky was in the camp of the 8-game schedule. They did not want to give up a non-conference cupcake in favor of an additional conference game. And I'll say, because this is a South Carolina show, South Carolina was also in that camp as well. They did not want to give up a non-conference game in favor of an additional conference game, knowing that they play Clemson every year. And so I think that sort of speaks to the mentality that you're talking about. Now, in the end, we know that those schools that had supported 9 games kind of came around and sort of that show of unison or whatever and embraced the 8-game schedule for an additional year. But, Kentucky was unequivocal about that from the start. They wanted to stay at 8 conference games, and I think that speaks to what you were saying there. That leaves room for 3 cupcakes plus Louisville as their Power 5 non-conference in hopes of scheduling their way to bowl eligibility. And in some ways, I think that's kind of insulting. Now, he has a hand in the scheduling, but I think it's kind of insulting to what Stoops has built there. Like, I think on some level, the program has advanced past that point. I mean, I'm not saying they're, going to be hoisting the crystal ball anytime soon, but they've had good teams there. I mentioned the 2 years where they won 10 games. They beat Florida in those seasons. And one of those years was a really good Florida team. I think Kentucky now can aspire to be something beyond beating up against MAC schools. Stoops has done a better job recruiting there than has historically been the case. He's made the transfer portal an asset for Kentucky. You just look at some of the skill position guys they got this year. Devin Leary, Ray Davis, one of the best running backs in the conference, and Tavion Robinson, 3 really good skill position guys. He plucked them all out of the portal. People see Kentucky as a place where they can play their football career without much shame, And so, yeah, they still seem to have that mentality. I think it's time to grow past that, though, especially if you got Mark Stoops as your coach, because I think he can be more and has proven he can be more than a 6-6 coach with a couple of wins over MAC opponents.
Did you see about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce? It's kind of a big deal, right?
Yes, I did see that.
What would be the SEC equivalent of that? Would it be Lane Kiffin going out with I don't know, a Kardashian or something, or Britney Spears maybe when she's not waving knives around.
Are we sure Lane hasn't? No, but yeah, that would be the one because most of these guys in the SEC are most of the coaches are married, right? Like Lane is the bachelor, so and of course the spotlight is always bright on all things Kiffin. So sure, yeah, some. Who's the big musical star down in Mississippi? I don't know. I'm sure they got some down there. Nobody's coming to me off the top of my head, but Kiffin
Katy
there,
Perry?
and whoever that is. Oh, there you
Didn't
go.
he have Katy Perry on game day? We need to make that happen.
There you go. Kiffin's tried. He sent some tweets, and actually, when Taylor had her, Kiffin's a big Taylor fan. He's a Swiftie. And when she had her album drop last year, he posted something to her, and she didn't bite at that. I don't think. Apparently, she had her eyes set on Kelsey.
She didn't bite on Joey Freshwater. She went the other way. I didn't know that, Blake. That's gold. I'm gonna have to go back now and look that up. He's Blake Toppmeyer, USA Today. Follow him on Twitter @BToppmeyer. Blake, I'm going to have you back on, and we're just going to talk about like pop culture and maybe a few other topics. Maybe like I've been watching the Food Network a lot. Maybe we'll dive into that.
Food Network, okay. My HGTV House Hunters is my kind of turn the brain off and just let the TV take over. That I guess that's my version of the Food Network is real estate.
You're the man, Blake. Appreciate you hopping on, bud.
Okay, sounds good.
Hey, glad you're coming back. Wonderful conversation with Blake Toppmeyer, really one of the authorities of SEC football. My light keeps doing this weird thing, getting my glasses, and it's really bothering me. See, I wear my glasses. This is what happens. But I like Blake's perspective on a lot of that. One of the things that we discussed, though, before he came on, and there's an article in the Charleston Post and Courier, Gene Sapikoff, the esteemed columnist at the Charleston Post and Courier, he has sources that are telling him Clemson and presumably a couple of other schools in the ACC will make an announcement perhaps this year, 2023, that they will be leaving the Atlantic Coast Conference. They have found a way to get out of the grant of rights that is binding that league together, or that they will go en masse or in as a group and negotiate a way out, that it's easier to negotiate a way out when you have numbers rather than being a solo act. But when you think of the ACC right now, I'm thinking about how that conference has transformed just over the last few days. Clemson, no longer the alpha of the conference, That is now Florida State. And Florida State coming into this year with so much hoopla, so much hype, so many expectations. Getting that win over Clemson last weekend really validates everything we were saying about the Seminoles. But it also, the win they got did showed me two things. One, that Jordan Travis might be the best quarterback in the country. That's not hyperbole. I'm not being a prisoner of the moment. But what I saw him do in Death Valley against a pretty good defense, really good defense. Clemson is still one of the elite defensive teams in the country. And he's banged up. That was impressive. I like his game. I like his moxie. I like his story. And he's also in a copyright dispute with Joe Exotic, a.k.a. Tiger King. Jordan Travis has some T-shirts out there professing to be Tiger King, going back to his win over LSU earlier this year. Got back to Joe Exotic in prison, and now Joe Exotic is basically calling for any lawyer in the country to come help him get at Jordan Travis. And he's willing to give any lawyer that'll represent him, and this is so Joe Exotic, any lawyer that'll represent him, he's willing to give them 80% of whatever they recoup. So if you're a lawyer, make of that what you will. But my point is this. It showed that Jordan Travis is perhaps the best quarterback in the country. Also, it demonstrated some flaws with Clemson, and I'm not talking about necessarily roster-wise. We know Clemson has a very flawed roster. The offensive linemen are not elite. The wide receivers are not representative of what we've come to expect from Clemson over the last few years. Wide receivers who can get separation and make plays. Helps when you have a generational quarterback back there. But it's just a flawed roster. But the coaching staff, that's my larger point. The coach, I I was befuddled by some of the play calls, and I was befuddled by some of the clock management. So I'm wondering how much longer this is going to continue. Is this the new norm at Clemson? When they lost to Georgia 2 years ago, the last time they started off 2-2, by the way, and they were, I think, 4-3 at one point. I said we're going to learn more about Dabo Swinney as a head coach over the next 12 to 24 months than we've ever learned about him in the decade prior to that of him as a head coach. And I think that's ringing true. We're learning that he's stubborn. We're learning that he's set in his ways. And we're learning that his system, unless it changes, cannot put forth the results that it was putting forth 10 years ago, 5 years ago. You got to work the portal. You got to be willing to bring in new people and new ideas. Nick Saban is able to do so much at Alabama because it was constantly cycling through coaches. And a lot of people would say, oh, it's to the detriment of the program. There's no continuity, this, that, and the other. That may be the case right now. He may have swung and missed with Tommy Rees, big time, bringing him in from Notre Dame to be the offensive coordinator. I think there are deeper issues there we'll explore another time. But by bringing in different coaches, specifically different coordinators, Pete Golding, Lane Kiffin, that's really the one, bringing him in. Fresh ideas, evolving with the times, but having better players and also having this way of going about business that Saban has perfected that corporate leaders across the world should try to emulate. Dabo Swinney's refusal to evolve, refusal to bring in fresh ideas other than Garrett Riley, which we're still waiting to see how that pans out, has set the program back. The Garrett Riley hire, not him specifically, but somebody else, that should have been done 2 years ago. That should have been done long ago to bring in different people, different ideas. He should have told Tony Elliott when the time came, dude, you've done all you can do here. It's time for you to go build your own program. We've seen Saban do it over and over and over and over. Dabo should have emulated that, but hindsight is, of course, 2020. A few other thoughts before we get rolling. I wanted to get to the Heisman Trophy, and I'm going to pull these odds up so I don't butcher them. Of course, Caleb Williams, the reigning Heisman Trophy winner, he is the odds-on favorite to repeat. Would be the second person to ever do that. Archie Griffin did it in the mid-'70s, outstanding running back at Ohio State, which there was some shenanigans with that. His season wasn't that great his senior year. It was below his junior year, actually. It was more of a lifetime achievement award, I guess. But he had already won one, so make of that what you will. But right now, Caleb Williams, and we're going to go with the money line, plus 350 to win the Heisman. But he has company. A fellow Pac-12 quarterback named Michael Penix Jr., also plus 350. Michael Penix Jr., absolutely phenomenal story. It was fantastic at Indiana when they had that Renaissance year. I think it was 2020. Hurts his knee. Everybody thinks his career's done. He transfers to Washington. Lights out last year. Fantastic this year. I just think it's a wonderful story. Quinn Ewers at Texas, he's third. You got the two guys tied for first, and then Quinn Ewers. Bo Nix is fourth, and Jordan Travis is fifth. Something that ties a few of those guys together? What could it be? Oh, yeah. 3 of those 5 play in the Pac-12. The Pac-12, the best conference in the ding-dong land, or at least the most entertaining in my estimation. 5 of the top 15 teams in America out of the Pac-12 in its last year of existence. Who would have thought that coming in? Who would have thought that coming in? It's absolutely phenomenal. Also this, and I didn't realize it until today. I did a little bit of research, that 3 of the top elite defenses in the country call the Pac-12 home, but 4 of the top 5 scoring offenses are in the Pac-12. Goodness gracious. The only thing, in my estimation, that could keep the Pac-12 from having not 1, but 2 teams in the college football playoff, and what a wonderful farewell gift that would be. It cannibalizes itself. It devours itself. Otherwise, the path is there. And I'll have to dig deeper into the schedules, but the path is there for 2 teams in the Pac-12 to make the playoff. What a wonderful story that would be. Absolutely phenomenal. So we're going to monitor that as we go along. I've got a few things to do. I've got a new blog post up. You can check out my top 25 And my bandwagoning posts on fanstreamsports.com. Go under blogs, check that out. That's going to be a regular thing. I've got a couple others I'll be posting over the next few days. There'll be regular entries into our blog library. If you don't have the app yet, get the FanStream Sports mobile app. It's good on Android as well as iPhone. Hit up the FanStream Sports Facebook page. Give it a like, follow it, whatever. Comment, suggestion, blah, blah, blah. And also hit me up on Twitter, X, at ScottH4456. The DMs are open. Let me know what's on your mind. Let me know what you like. Let me know what you don't like. Let me know what you want more of, what you could do without. But let me know. I want to thank Blake Toppmeyer for coming aboard. Excellent segment with him. We've got a couple more interviews set up for later this week as we get closer to week 5 of college football. But until next time, everybody, be safe.